the name of the presentation is The New Threatscape and What We Can Do About It. And again, my name is Tom Fitzpatrick, and we'll get rolling. So for those of you who are not aware with Kaspersky, maybe you've heard of us but don't know a lot about the company, I'll give you a little bit of information. It started back in 1988, where a guy named Eugene Kaspersky, and if you're looking at the slide there, that's a picture of Eugene. Eugene had just graduated from college. He has 2 degrees. He's got 1 degree in cryptography, and he has another degree in computer programming. So a pretty smart guy, what you and I might classify as a computer geek, et cetera, a really brilliant guy as far as programming. But he had gotten out of college, got his first job as an intern, and he went into the office one morning and found that the Cascade virus had gotten into his PC. So it kind of fascinated him, the way this thing had gotten in there. It was, it was manipulating with the registries, with the operating system, et cetera. So what he did was he wrote a little application that would help him find other viruses and other bits of malware on his PC and pretty much those around the rest of the office. And from that little application that he wrote, we have now become the world's largest independent or privately held security software company. So we've got just short of 3,000 employees. And a couple of interesting things about the company is we believe one of our key differentiators is the fact that our technology is what we call built from the ground up. And what that means is when we recognize that we need new technology, instead of going out and buying a company that offers that, we actually write it ourselves and integrate it into a single code base. We have a single security architecture, if you will, that it makes for a very efficient, very lightweight experience on the end user system. So it's a very, very effective way of putting a product together without buying a company and kind of jamming somebody else's code into your code base and hoping it works without any glitches or any bugs. So that's one of our big differentiators. We win all kinds of awards because we have excellent detection technology. In fact, there's over 130, in fact, there's 135 different companies that use bits and pieces of the Kaspersky code and the Kaspersky technology in the products that they bring to market. So you could be using Kaspersky technology today in your infrastructure and not even realize it. There's so many companies that use our technology. We've got just about 400 million endpoints around the world that we protect, and every day that goes by, there's another 50,000 that fall under the Kaspersky umbrella of protection. So that's kind of a little background on Kaspersky. We're solely laser focused on anti-malware. That's the business that we're in, is finding, detecting, remediating malware on the system. So that's kind of what we do. And what we're seeing today, I'm going to go to the next slide. What we're seeing today from our customers in business, and this should resonate with a lot of you, is the lines of business are creating or putting demands on IT. They're putting demands on the whole organization, the boardroom, upper management, saying we need to be more profitable, we need to be more agile, we need to have more productivity out of our people, our competitors are walking all over us, we need better tools, we need to be more efficient, et cetera. And I think we all hear that every single day of our lives. And the way IT has to respond to that is obviously put new technologies into place. So, just when we thought it was going to get easier, just when we thought the number of operating systems was going to decrease, we're finding an even more heterogeneous or diverse network. We're finding, Apple in the workplace. We're finding Linux is commonplace now. Obviously, Windows and multiple flavors of Windows. And then you have a bunch of mobile platforms to deal with that. We've got Android, et cetera. So business is responding by having to put a lot of different platforms out there. Mobility has become commonplace now. Most of our workers today, instead of being within the confines of our normal network, they're all over the place. We've got workers in Starbucks. We've got workers who are doing work on airplanes, who are in front of the customer. They're using their mobile smartphones to conduct business with today. We've got all kinds of devices that make it mobile. And then to make it even more interesting, we've got companies that are being forced to embrace these bring your own device policies where somebody's going to run out and buy the latest and greatest tablet that they saw in the newspaper on a Sunday morning and bring it into work and expect IT to enable them to get their email on that. So this consumerization of IT is a big deal, and it's being kind of forced on IT by the user community. We're being asked to embrace cloud computing. We're being asked to enable social media in the workplace for a more productive employee and for a happier workforce. And frankly, marketing needs to contact the, marketing talks to customers through social media, so IT has to respond to that. And finally, this whole world of virtualization, it is such an amazing cost savings. It makes for such an efficient way to move your data into one place and use underutilized hardware. IT is crazy not to adopt virtualization in many cases. The problem with all of this, and of course these are all great things, by the way, I'm certainly not disparaging them. What I'm saying is these are technologies IT has to embrace, but the problem is it often opens IT and the infrastructure to more malware. So what does IT have to do? They've got to respond to that. But the problem that IT sees is that it's not the old battle that they're fighting anymore. If you take a look at this little graph, and this is simply just an illustration to show that the malware that was there yesterday has exponentially grown. It is so much greater than what it used to be. In fact, just a couple of statistics for you. Every single day that goes by, our daily average is between 70 to 71,000 new threats per day. That went from, that's almost every second is a different malware threat that's come out on the internet. Now, Kaspersky keeps a very large database of all internet threats that are out there. So regardless of what it is, we keep this large database. And right now we're tracking about 68 million threats that exist out there. Now, that's a big number, but it really means nothing unless I can give you some sort of reference. At the beginning, and by the way, this is as of December last week, 68 million. At the beginning of 2011, which was just almost 12 months ago, we were tracking only 50 million. So it had taken, 12 years to ratchet up to 50 million, and we gained another 18 million, which is I think 34 or 36 odd percent growth in just 12 months. So it's been a banner year for the cyber criminal. They are going all out and writing, new malware. Now, what they're doing, by the way, is they're not writing 70,000 new threats a day. They're writing, a few new threats a day, and they're repacking those threats, recrypting them, making them look a little bit different, tweaking them somehow in a very slight way, in hopes that if they send out a bunch of them, one's going to scoot through an anti-malware scanner. And I think we've all seen that happen. Another point of reference to you is that our researchers are telling us that of every 14 downloads from a browser, one of those downloads will contain some sort of malware on average. So these are people in the office that are on Explorer, Mozilla, whatever, in some kind of browser saying, oh yeah, I want that ringtone. Oh yeah, I want to get this latest update here. Oh yeah, that's a really neat picture or a song, whatever. 1 in 14 on average contains malware. And these are challenges that are facing IT, but the question we have to ask ourselves is, why is this growing so much? Why are we having this great year with all this malware? Well, it all boils down to this formula right here. This is what the cyber criminal is after. I'm just joking. It really doesn't boil down to this formula. What it really boils down to is plain hard cash. It boils down to dollars and cents. So with that, I mean, we see these cyber criminals making money hand over fist. I mean, whether it's a euro or a dollar, whatever, whether it's cars, whether it's, fancy houses, there is money in cybercrime. So that's a major problem. So the question that, or I guess one of the most interesting things I found about it was this little chart that we produced. And by the way, at the bottom of this page, there is a URL. You can go there. It's a Flickr photo stream that our chairman has put together. And Eugene Kaspersky, you can see that's his private Flickr stream. But he's got a bunch of little charts up there. And I think you'll find it interesting to kind of peruse through those and maybe if you can print some of those and put them up around the office, whatever, so people are aware. But what's interesting is how they make money off of this, off their cybercrime efforts. So as an example, and I know some of this is kind of small to read, but if your e-wallet gets stolen with your e-money in it, you just lost $30. If you get some sort of malware where they encrypt your files, they can get $100 out of you to decrypt those files. On the other side, if once they get your information and they want to sell it, they can get a scan of your passport and get $25 off of that. One of my favorites on this slide is if it's a high-value virtual character in an online game. If you lose that and a cyber criminal gets a hold of it, they just made $150. So if you do have high-value virtual characters, you heard it here first. Keep an eye on those guys. Don't let them out of your sight. It is affecting people. The survey we just did this year, this was our global IT security risk study, we found that 91% of the people that responded to the survey, and I think it was over 1,000, had experienced at least one IT security intrusion in the last 12 months. And of those intrusions, it could have been a hack, et cetera. 61% of the folks responded that it was some sort of virus worm, some kind of malware that had gotten onto their system. And one of the challenges that they cited was, and if you remember back to the chart I showed with the amount of malware going sky high, they're being asked to fight a much bigger battle, but with fewer resources. And you can see 70% responded that they don't have enough resources to kind of get the work that they need to have done, much less fight the malware battle. So. But the one interesting thing that we asked them, what is the biggest threat to IT security today? And overwhelmingly the response came back and put this in the #1 position, which was social networking, which is the Facebooks, the Twitters, et cetera. My guess is if you've been in the IT business or even associated with it over the last couple of years, this should be no surprise to you. So this is validation of everything you've been hearing. It's a big threat. And I think it's pretty basic to understand why it's a big threat, because it's hugely popular. And you look at all the different social media sites that are out there, most of us are on at least one of these things. I mean, I know for a fact I'm on Facebook, Twitter, I have a YouTube account, I'm on LinkedIn, I tried Google+, all right, I admit it. But there's something innate in humanity, I think, that makes us want to click on things. I think the average person is very click happy, and we could argue that some may be more than others. I think the average person trusts everyone. I think people like to have friends. They like to trust their friends, and they like to see what's going on in the world, and they like to click on things. So social media, for those reasons alone, I think is why it's hugely popular. And because it's hugely popular, I believe it's a gathering ground for cybercrime. And as long as it's unprotected and unfettered in the workplace, IT is opening itself to threats, which I think is why it came up as the #1 threat to IT security. But if you take a look at this is fascinating. All in 1 minute, this is what happens. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but you can see that this is just an enormous force that IT has to deal with when you take a look at this. So the lesson to be learned, I guess, if there is one with social media, and let me state this first. I want to state that at Kaspersky, we recognize that the #1 vector for threats in the workplace today is email. Email is the #1 way that cybercrime uses to get their malware into your organization, but social media is fast overtaking that. So be aware that I think it's beneficial to allow people to use social media in the workplace because, as I said, it makes a happier employee, all this, whatever. But when it's unbridled and people aren't trained to be, to look for funky links, you're going to have problems. So just know that. So there was an interesting study done by a guy named David Stelzel. And what I want to talk about now is the fact that we know what these threats are that are out there. This Threatscape is vast. It's growing exponentially. It's all about money. There's places that cybercrime tends to target because that's where the money is. But from an anti-malware perspective, the real threat is that the endpoint generally, not that it goes unprotected, but sometimes it's the last thing that people look at, think about, et cetera, when they're putting in their security measures in the workplace. And David Stelzel, back to this story, did a study, and he talked about home security. He asked people, when you're thinking about securing your home, what do you think about? What are the things that you use to secure your home? Some people thought about prevention. They said, you know, I need stronger doors, I need a higher fence, and my locks need to be better. And some people said, detection really is where it's at. I'm going to focus on getting an alarm in there, having a crime watch around the neighborhood to keep an eye on and keep the crooks out of the neighborhood. And I'm going to put a motion detector, so if there's movement, the alarms are going to go off. Some people said, what I'm going to do is, clearly these folks were from Texas, is I'm going to get a gun or I'm going to get a dog. I've got, a button to push and get the police over here. So there's different ways of looking at home security. So of these, 95% of the people listed out these 12 items. But the other point was 95% of those people thought that prevention was the most important. And from an IT perspective, that's likened to putting your security investment into protecting the data center, where it's not, the crime isn't targeting the data center per se. The crime is targeting the endpoint, because the endpoint is the weakest link, because the IT, or not the employee is the weakest link in the organization using that endpoint. The employee is the one that's going to surf the web and hit unsafe URLs. The employee is the one that's going to click on the malicious link in an email. The employee is the one that's going to go onto Facebook and click on some kind of malicious link and target there. So the point is not focusing the security investment solely at the data center. It's looking holistically at the organization and really taking a strong look at the endpoint. And what I mean by that is not just saying, hey, let's throw antivirus or anti-malware on all the endpoints. What I'm saying is put good antivirus and superior anti-malware at the endpoint, because there is a difference. And I could show you study after study where the range of detection, and I think there was one study I looked at, and this was recently, where, and this is just in the last month, there were 79 different antivirus or anti-malware companies that had submitted their products for testing to see who detected viruses better, okay? So there's different independent companies or agencies out there, testing companies, that will, throw a bunch of viruses that like machines with different anti-malware packages on it to see who detects more. 79 companies out there. And of those 79, the range of detection went from something in the 15 to 20% detection up into the high and mid-90s. So it's not just good enough to say, yeah, I got anti-malware on my endpoints. I've got good anti-malware that is detecting the viruses out there. So that's the point. Now, what are the risks of not having good anti-malware on the endpoint? Now, this slide I'm going to show you is something that I can promise you none of you have ever seen before, because this is not something that we in the IT business get to see a lot of. What you're looking at, I've got some screenshots here from a real botmasters drop zone. This is a portal that a botmaster who's out sending bots out maliciously, trying to get computers infected under his or her domain and control. This is what they look at. We were able to get these. I can't share them with you, but I can certainly show them to you on this slide. But what it is it's a regular portal. They go on to a URL. They've got a username and password that they type in. And once they're in there, they can select from a number of infected machines. And then they can, once they select that machine, they can go look at that machine and see what's going on. This is a screenshot. You see the little castle? That's a Windows desktop, obviously. That's an infected user from the from looking at that infected user's desktop from the portal of the bot master's domain. So you can see their IP address, you can see the ID number that's been assigned to them, which is their machine. They can see what operating system they're running, what country they're located in. You can actually see this guy's desktop and what kind of icon. So clearly the guy's interested in music. He's got Skype there. He's running McAfee, so surely he shouldn't have been infected with a bot, but somehow he was. So, so very interesting stuff that you can see here from the bot master's perspective. And these are the risks that we run into when a machine gets infected. So here's another user. This guy is also in Italy, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he's looking at a porn video, although you can't see the imagery. It says video porno. You can get his IP address there. You can see that, you know, there's nothing hidden from the bot master's view. This is another screen, a reporting screen with statistics on it, where we can see that Italy, under this particular bot domain, there's over 5,000 machines that this person's controlling. 1,100 of them are in Italy. There's one in Russia, one in the U.S., and 94 were not. I don't know exactly where those are located because it's a couple of hyphens there, but you can see there's a lot of information that the bot master has. And then I thought this was an interesting screen too, and I'm certainly not saying that one certain version of Windows is more vulnerable than another, but these are all the operating systems that that this bot master has the bot software on, and a vast majority of them are on Windows XP Service Pack 3. There's still quite a few under Windows 7 and Vista, but looks like XP is the clear winner there. At least the 32-bit version, because there's a 64-bit down below where there's only one person. But I don't know if that has any bearing on it. I just thought that was an interesting slide. So the point of this is real, and there is a risk when the machine is going unprotected with something that's not catching that bot software. So people can be infected. They are being infected every single day. In fact, there's an interesting story. We've got, this is a true story. This was in Jackson, Mississippi, Jackson Public School System. The IT administrator's name is Stefan out there. And one of the problems that they were tasked with solving was they had a bunch of machines that were a little bit older than what they wanted them to be. Of course, these were machines that, you know, normally we want to keep a machine for 2 or 3 years. These guys had, these things were growing beards. They were so old, these machines the kids had to use and the teachers had to use, and they were so slow. And what happened was they were using another vendor's anti-malware product, and every time it would go into a scan, it would just drag that system down into the depths of the ground, and the kids couldn't get their work done, and the teachers couldn't get their grades in, and all that stuff. So they had a major problem on their hands, and it certainly was not in the budget to go out and just buy all new machines. So that would have solved the problem, I would think. But so what they started doing, now keep in mind, the problem was not that they were getting malware. They were not, you know, they didn't get these, you know, pop-ups that said, oh, you've got a virus. All they were doing. And by the way, they had anti-malware from one of the top 4 vendors in the world. They were getting their updates. They were pushing their updates down to the machines every day, and, you know, as often as they would come, and they were doing their scans. They were doing all the stuff they were supposed to do, all the best practice stuff for security. They were solely looking for something that had a lighter footprint. That's all this exercise was about. So what they did was they put a bunch of, you know, they went out and tried this vendor, that vendor. They tried Kaspersky. They tried XYZ and ABC. They put them all on the machines to see which would run better. And they found that the Kaspersky, this is not a Kaspersky commercial. I'm trying to make a point here. But they found that the Kaspersky ran thinner and lighter. So, of course, what they did was they bought Kaspersky, put it on all their machines, and they ran the very first scan. And the first scan that they ran, they found over 17,000 instances of malware all over the network that they had no idea was there. They had no clue. So they were using antivirus. They had paid their subscription. They were doing their updates. They were pushing the updates out, but they still had 17,401 instances of malware on their network. So the point of that story is Make sure what you're using is actually working. And that leads me to my next slide as to what you can do, what I can do, what we all can do as IT professionals to make sure that we're protected. And I think this is true whether it's anti-malware software that we're using, whether it's a new printer that we put in for the sales department to use, whatever piece of equipment it is, whatever purchase order you just signed, I think this fits. And that is always get a second opinion. Always make sure that when you have version A or vendor X malware, anti-malware, you've got a couple of production machines that are running vendor B. Make sure that when vendor A said this printer spits out 17 pages a minute, you put in another vendor's printer right next to it to make sure that it's keeping up. Make sure that you got what you paid for. And of course, when you look back to the Jackson Public Schools, they should have done that a long time ago. Make sure you're getting a second opinion, because you never know what's going on your systems unless you've got something else to gauge it against. Another thing that we can do, and this is this one is, I almost hate to say it because it should go unsaid, but it's so simple that if this was something that we all did well, if companies around the world did this well, malware, cybercrime would be dead. It would be non-existent. And what this really boils down to is making sure the people in the organization that are using the PCs, AKA the weakest link in the organization, it's security, know what they're doing. And this boils down to Bobby in accounting, Susie in sales, Jim over in finance, whatever. Are we training them? Are we teaching them to have a security awareness culture? This boils down to like when we have kids, right? You always tell your kids, now when you're leaving the mall at night, make sure you've got your keys in your hand. Make sure you're looking around you. Make sure you parked under a light. All these things that we try to teach our kids to make themselves a little bit more aware and a little bit more safe. These are the things we need to be teaching the employees in the organization. Don't click on links that look suspicious. In fact, how many people actually look at the link before they click on it? I know I do. Are we teaching people to look for, Google.com spelt the wrong way? We've all seen those links. Are we teaching people that when an email comes in from UPS that says your package has gone undelivered, the first question they should ask is, what package? I didn't ship a package. This is clearly bogus. When they're getting an email that says your federal income tax return has been rejected, or something from the United States Postal Service that says the package that you mailed is at our shop, it never went out because of insufficient postage. I mean, these are things that we need to teach people to kind of always question and be suspicious of everything on the internet. And people tell me, they say, hey, you know what, Tom, we got this licked. No problem. We have every year we put our employees through sexual harassment training. Every year we put our employees through business ethics training. And we've also got a cybersecurity awareness class that we teach every January. It's online. There's they can get a little certificate for it. I'm thinking, that's great. I mean, that is a fantastic start to creating this culture of awareness. My feeling, though, is once a year just isn't enough. This is something that needs to be ingrained into people, because at the end of the day, one virus outbreak, one hack that's successful could cost a company millions of dollars. It could cost a company their intellectual properties. It could cost the company time. If the network's down, they can't service a customer or make a sale. You kind of get the point there. So I don't want to beat this one into the ground, but it's something we got to do a little bit better on. The last one I want to talk about is one, and this is kind of a strong statement I'll make. It's compliance is just one step north of negligence. And that was made by Josh Corman of the 450. Actually, he's no longer with the 451 group. He just left December 1. But it's a great statement nonetheless. And that has to do with the fact that I think we are all trying to be compliant, and I think our customers demand it, the industry demands it. In many cases, a lot of the contracts we have with our suppliers and our customers demand that we be compliant with whatever, whether it's PCI compliancy or whatever. We all try to do that, but in many cases, I think the fight to be compliant or maintain compliancy, sometimes we fail to see what we're really trying to do is protect our data. And I could give you many, many examples just with PCI DSS 2.0 compliancy, where we've lost sight of what the real end goal is. But I think the best way to illustrate it is with this story where, and most of you know what this picture is, that is the Titanic. And the Titanic is a great illustration here. They had to be compliant, they had to have 1,060 seats in lifeboats in order for them to get the, the stamp, the compliancy stamp. And they actually overshot it. These guys really were on the ball. They had 1,178 seats on those lifeboats. They were compliant. In fact, I'm not going to give them just you're compliant. I'm going to give them an exceeds compliancy. They didn't just meet it, they exceeded compliancy on this one. The problem was they lost sight of reality. They lost sight of what they were really trying to accomplish because they were focused so much on being compliant. The problem was there were 3,500 people on the boat. So clearly, if the goal is, if you're trying to get the A+ in being compliant, you might be missing the mark there. So I think you kind of get the point there. Don't always just settle for compliancy. We need to kind of be a little bit above that. So at the end of the day, Kaspersky, and this is my Kaspersky commercial, if you will, we try to be ahead of what's next. In fact, I believe we are ahead of what's next. And whether it's some kind of threat that you're being faced or some kind of technology that you're being asked to adopt, Kaspersky, we've got a product, we've got a solution that's for that, and we're ahead of it. We're always ahead of cybercrime. So that's kind of our goal, is to be ready for what's next and enable IT to be confident in what they embrace, because we can get them there. So that is the end of the presentation. And I thank you for your time today. I hope I gave you a little bit of extra time in your day. If you've got any questions, we do have one of our engineers, I believe, is on, Kaylin. And if you've got technical questions about Kaspersky or about the company, more than happy to take those now.
Okay, yeah, feel free to put any questions that you may have through the Q&A and through the chat. We'll just give it a minute here and see if anyone has any questions. Okay, it did look like one came through. It says, what is Kaspersky doing to harden operating systems?
Now, that's a Kaylin question. Did we determine if Kaylin was on the call?
Yes, he is here. Let me take him off mute. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, hi. Thanks for the call. Thanks for the question. Looks like Paul sent that in. So Kaspersky is doing a number of things to help administrators harden operating systems. Our new flagship product, Kaspersky Endpoint Security 8, which recently released, offers a really robust set of tools that do more than just malware scanning and antivirus functions. We actually have introduced a vulnerability scanning into the endpoint product. So now you're able to do things from the same interface that you're setting your antivirus policy. You're also able to scan for vulnerabilities in the operating system. So for Windows critical fixes, hot fixes that Microsoft has released, Kaspersky will now help you determine if you're missing any of those patches. So during the slideshow, you saw Tom showed the botnet controlling interface with all the different operating systems that were owned by the bot herders. Some of those inevitably owned machines probably were compromised because they were missing critical fixes. So Kaspersky actually will let you run a scan of all your systems, and it'll give you back a report saying that these are the machines that you have which are missing these critical fixes, and we'll even let you push those fixes out directly through the same interface.